Well, welcome. Tonight, the silly season has started. Very few people know that reference is a compliment, but it is the time of election. And I've said it from the beginning, to me there is no more important position than school committee member. You know, I remember when my daughters were growing up, if I got a couple hours a day with them while they were in high school, I was lucky. We're going to decide on two people that are going to dictate the policy of how 6 to 8 hours a day of our children's lives are spent and what we do to get them ready for the next step, which would be college or a career. So, as always, I'll never ask you to vote for a specific candidate, not my place, but I'll beg you to get to know the candidates. And there'll be plenty of opportunities with the debates at the Senior Center. Al Holman and Kevin Rudden will have the candidates on their show. The citizens from Milford will have, you know, a debate for each of the candidates. So there's plenty of time, but get to know them. Pick the one who you feel best will represent your values and help your children grow up in the real traditions of this town. So enough of that. Let's start with an introduction.
Hi, Al. Thank you again. My name is Jim Ligor. I'm running again for school committee. This is my first term, so I'll be wrapping up my first 3 years. I am a born and raised Milfordian, although I guess that determines like how far you go back from your ancestry. So
No, there's an official rule.
there's an official. That's right.
It's 3 generations, and you have to live within 2 miles of your mother. Because I told my daughter she finally became a true Milfordian
Right.
when she bought her house at the end, you know, on Highland Street.
Yeah.
Because that's 1.5 miles from mom.
So you qualify.
So she qualifies.
Yeah, you're in the demographic. I think I am 2 generations in. So, but I myself am born and raised in Milford. So. This is my first term in school committee. Happy to be back for re-election. I think we had a very, for me, it was an extremely, excuse the pun, educational experience. Having had other town positions, personnel board, and being involved with town meeting a little bit, gave me a lot of exposure to town civics and the political landscape. But school committee really is a lot of strategy, but a lot of tactical initiative as well, is something I look forward to.
Well, everybody I've talked to has said your first term, you're just being a sponge. You're just learning what goes on in all the different aspects of running a school district.
Absolutely, and I think for me that was pretty compelling. I participated in a contract negotiation my first term, so it was interesting to see how the teachers union worked, how the contract negotiations, the collective bargaining processes, et cetera. So that was very compelling as well, where I got to go through a number of other administrative functions such as grievances.
And you're lucky because it's the Milford Union.
Yes.
You know, when you think about other towns and the wars that their unions go against the school committee and the town, our unions have always been fantastic.
I was actually going to follow up with that. There was a lot of collaboration in the process. I mean, it was truly a collaborative process, and there was a lot of agreement. As you would expect, there would be some level of bartering back and forth on certain issues. That's going to happen in any environment.
That's their role.
Yep, that's their role, and then you would expect that. And I think that's healthy actually, because it helps foster different directions. However, I thought the teams came together very well. They worked very well collectively, and I think we put together a roadmap that I think both parties were happy with at the end of the process.
I'll never forget, and I've mentioned it previously, when the state cut back and we were really having to skinny down our budgets, many towns around were at war with their school departments. And I remember a couple towns who their teachers delayed their raises. Which, if I can't afford it today, how am I going to afford a double raise in a year? And our teachers said, if you tell us you'll keep our money inside the school department, we'll give up our raises. We'll forego our raises so we save teachers.
Right.
Coming from the union, if you don't know Milford, that would be kind of wow.
Yeah, that's compelling. And it really shows the level of loyalty for the district. I know a lot of people may or may not know a lot of the educators actually in the district are Milfordians themselves, have gone through the district. So I think it speaks volumes when folks come back.
And they stay.
And they stay for a long time.
I remember when we came back to Milford, my oldest went to Milford High. She had the same biology teacher that I did.
Yes.
And
yeah.
It was kind of nice to see the continuity that he had been there so many years and still was invigorating. He's well.
And that's
let's get down to business.
Sure.
I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
I think for myself, my value proposition again is collaboration and involvement. So I've recommended that I've been on not only school committee directly, but I'm on about 6 or 7 different subcommittees. I like the idea of working directly with administration in order to help drive and implement change kind of from the ground up. So I take more of a roll your sleeves up approach. We've put together a number of programs surrounding the district, such as the marketing program. We have an IT subcommittee, and we have our traditional subcommittees like policy and budget. However, some of the ancillary subcommittees, like marketing in particular, was a passion of mine. So when I came onto your show 3 years ago, we talked about...
You promised marketing to drive down the school choice numbers.
So we've been able... Yes. So we've been able to, I feel like we've been able to improve our school choice numbers. I know we've had a lot of discussions about that at
Well, I want to go into
level.
it in detail because I think people are getting confused over the number of students, which we can control.
Yes.
And the reimbursement rate,
yes,
which we can't.
Right.
So let's save that one for a little later.
No problem. But so my value proposition, again, I think is collaboration and pushing the district along from pretty much the same value proposition I came in with last time. I believe that we should be looking for ways to improve post-secondary outcomes, whether you are on a college track or not. We're looking at ways to implement additional curriculum for kids that are maybe not moving in a collegiate direction. And if you are moving in a collegiate direction, then we have a number of different offerings that we can position you in to help you be as most successful as you can moving forward. Post-secondary outcome is actually my biggest focus, and improving the messaging for the district moving forward so that the community is aware of what we're actually doing and how we are being measured against it.
Fundamental question comes up. If I move to Milford, will my children get a good education?
Yeah, the answer to that is 100% yes. Absolutely.
And why are our numbers so much lower than the towns around us?
I think when we look at, again, we focus on post-secondary outcome. I think when we look at how we are educating our kids from a collegiate perspective, I think we've put a lot of effort into developing a very comprehensive offering with 19, 20 AP classes, a number of different arts curriculum, music curriculum, and sports. For kids that are not on a college track, we have been paying special attention to adding additional curriculum like constructions management, manufacturing, automotive, restaurant and hotel management. I think some folks don't define those in the same category as collegiate achievement. So I think that when we look at post-secondary outcome, we're focused on how well did we prepare the student for life after high school. And I think we're making strides in both categories to actually improve that post-secondary outcome significantly when kids graduate. And again, I think if you're on a college track, I think we have the ability to move you in any of the most competitive colleges in the state, in the country. From a non-college track, I feel like we are putting together a comprehensive offering as well.
Are we doing enough for the kids who aren't going to college?
At the moment, I'd have to say no. I think that we need to focus more on putting together not a traditional trade program, because we can't offer.
Well, that's against the law.
Yes, so we can't offer the same thing. But I think we're in the midst of offering and putting together a comprehensive package for kids that are not on a college track. So that's why we are looking at programs like MACWIC, which gives you an applied manufacturing skill. We're partnering with local firms and organizations. We're putting together co-ops. We're putting together job share programs. that's a huge step in terms of how we prepare somebody that's not going for college for post-secondary.
Well, and I really, for years, I mean, when we grew up here, when we came out of Milford High, if you were going to college, well, when we came out of 8th grade, if you were going to college, you went to Milford High.
Right.
If you weren't going to college and you wanted to do a trade, you went to BVT.
Right.
And that always seemed to be pretty clear cut. Now, Dr. Fitz has done fantastic things at BVT, but it worries me. And it hits home because I've said it before. My father came from Portugal with 4 years of school. Put him in an organic chemistry class, not so good. Put a tool in his hand, he was an artist.
Right.
But to get into BVT, you got to be top 10, 15% of your class.
Right.
So if you have people like my dad, who was not an academician, who wouldn't do well on the academic track, well, now what happens? Because you can't get into BVT.
Right, and so that's our responsibility to put together offerings that allow kids to have, to allow them to go into occupations that are non-college related, that are going to pay in a more competitive wage than retail. So, for example, the IT tech field, the manufacturing space, constructions management. Those fields have a much more impactful starting salary rate. There's opportunities for improvement. There's opportunities for benefits, for college, for tuition reimbursement, et cetera. So you're going to get in with an organization that actually has some growth opportunity. And not that there's not growth opportunity within retail, but typically those retail roles don't add the same level of expansion as some of those, as a manufacturing role or an IT technology role.
When I think of manufacturing roles, I mean, again, when we grew up, way back when, it was drapers.
Right.
My mom was a drill press operator. She was in manufacturing. Cousins worked in Porter Shoe, Bickford Shoe, Milford Shoe. They were shoemakers.
Right. And
that was a very traditional, not the highest paying job.
Right.
But I think, God, to hire people when we built our pharmaceutical plant up in Worcester, the operators were in 50 to 60 grand.
Yeah.
So these were not low pay,
right,
unskilled positions.
Right. And you don't see a lot of vertically integrated manufacturing organizations anymore. It's really more modular assembly, test, final assembly, and ship. If you look at our Dell EMC facility in Franklin, it's modular assembly. Right. So the definition of manufacturing from an OEM perspective to more of a design and manufacturer perspective has changed. So those jobs have changed. Those pay scales have changed. Those benefit structures have changed. If you go and work on the floor at Dell or you work on the floor at Waters, you're going to get a much more competitive wage than if you go to the floor at Target.
Yes.
And that's where, we want to see, our high school graduates, if they're not going to go to college, we want to see them go into more meaningful occupations.
Well, I mean, those jobs start at $20-some an hour.
Yeah. And BVT sent 16% of their kids to the workforce last year. We sent 27% of our kids to the workforce last year.
Wow.
So we're looking for ways to improve that post-secondary outcome by making them enter that workforce with a more compelling and comprehensive skill set.
16%. So 84% went to college.
Yes.
Again, I love the results, but I worry about the people like my dad.
Well, so to your point then, so BVT has an extremely competitive program from a vocational school perspective. Mike's post-secondary outcome for college is excellent. However, they also serve the lowest economically disadvantaged population in the state.
Is that right?
Yeah. So when you look at high needs, they don't have a lot. So there's a certain level of challenges that come along with a high needs population. And if you look at the differences between Milford and BVT, you can see success rates in different areas based on the number of high needs in both categories.
But now people look at MCAS scores and just standardized evaluation scores, and they say, Milford, you're below everybody around you. Should I be worried about sending my child to Milford High?
Yeah, I mean, so I'd say, again, the answer to that is no. Now, I can speak from a school committee member's perspective and say no, and here's why, because we're doing a lot to improve MCAS testing. We've done an excellent job at expanding and extricating kids through the ELL program. We're looking for ways to add additional resources to help kids with high needs to improve their testing through standardized testing measures. And then I can take my school committee hat off and speak as a parent who's had my oldest child just go through 4 years of Milford High, graduate with a 3.4 and got into 5 out of 5 colleges. So I can speak from both perspectives, but I see both sides. So as Milford's demographic changes, which is an awesome thing, I look at it as here's an opportunity to go to school and participate in one of the most diverse student bodies in Massachusetts. Because we mirror the state, we mirror the federal landscape almost one-to-one. So to us, that's a benefit. But for those who would prefer a more homogeneous academic experience, you've got a number of surrounding towns around you.
But when I think of that experience, the homogeneity that a certain town will give you, I hear a lot of parents consider it because they want to make sure their kids get properly educated to get into the better colleges.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I mean, my oldest got into everywhere she wanted to go.
Same with mine.
My youngest only applied to Holy Cross, so thank God she got in.
That was the only one, right? That's the only one that mattered to you, right?
She was convinced she's going in.
Right, I'm in.
And it was like, okay, but go early decision, because just in case you don't get in,
yeah,
we don't want you to have to learn how to say, do you want fries with that order?
Right.
But, you say you're improving, you've got programs to improve MCAS. The top part of our population, do they really need improvement? Aren't they doing as well as everybody else or better?
They are. So I love the example that you gave last time I was on, 3 years ago, but I'd even heard it before that when you talk about Tommy Davern and you use bimodal distribution and you compare our top percentage to our top percentage in the 15 towns around us. That is still true. But it's also amazingly compelling to see what great work that Jen Nojanian is doing to move kids through the ELL program into general education who are graduating and going to college. So when you consider the amount of uplift associated with moving kids through it, kids that do not speak a native language of English coming into the program, much like you when you got here.
When I got here.
When you got here. And the program now obviously is a lot more comprehensive. If you consider the amount of effort associated with that process, moving them to having post-secondary outcome, either from college or moving into the workforce, it's impressive. So when we talk about the amount of education that's going on at Milford, in Milford school districts, particularly at the high school level, it's compelling.
But I feel comfortable, because as we move people in, as we recruit them, and they've asked me about the Milford school system, I've said, get involved.
Right.
Learn.
Yeah.
Learn what's offered, because the top Milford kids, I'd put them up against the top kids from any of these surrounding towns.
Yes.
Homogeneity aside.
Absolutely, 110%. So my oldest son applied to the 5 that he wanted was Stonehill, Bridgewater, Assumption, Bryant, and Endicott. Got into all 5, right? So now for him, it's going to come down to where he wants to play football, because that's what he wants to do. So, and that's fine, but all early action, all.
But those are the measures. We've got a biased view.
We do, right.
We love Milford, we love our kids. The colleges don't. They can pick anybody from any town.
Absolutely.
So when I hear that your son got a choice of any of the 5 he wanted, then to me that says, hey, you're doing pretty good.
We do. So I always challenge people, show me where we fall off. Because if you have, because it's not just the school's obligation, it's also the home's obligation. And I think it's a shared effort, it's a collaborative effort to raise that student. The school has a huge share of it, don't get me wrong. But when you talk about the effects of post-secondary outcome from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, there's a significant amount of challenges associated with that. So those kids need additional resources. They may be dealing with issues that are non-traditional to things that maybe you and I and our kids experience.
My daughter really said something profound once that stuck, where she said, Dad, because she does the special needs programs. She said, Dad, my role as an educator is to get all the kids to their potential and maybe a little bit more.
Right.
But in my class, potential is very different. But, you know, if I can get every kid, you know, to pass MCAS, they all feel great about it.
Right.
To be able to go out after high school and live on their own if they want to, then I've done my job. Nothing more, nothing less.
And that's a compelling, that's a very different metric than what, you know, my son was going through.
But again, your son, my daughter, when they went, the metric is, did we prepare them?
Exactly.
So that they could go anywhere they want, whatever college they want, and succeed.
Right.
You know, I mean, my oldest, she did have one semester where she screwed up. She got a 3.95. She got that B plus. They got that B plus, and I said, you know, we're goofing off this time. No 4.0.
Let's have, like, she's got to have some fun.
But you know, you sit there and say, wait a minute, if she can pull a 4.0 across the board at Clark for 3 straight years, you know, the last 3 years, then I can't really complain that the teachers at Milford High didn't prepare her.
Yeah.
And now she's getting her PhD, and she was really upset. She had like a 3.98 average.
I think she'll get by with that.
Yeah, we said, no, you can do it.
You can swing it.
Now, as we look around, many people are leaving Milford. School choice is a big topic lately.
Yeah.
You know, we've had reports, and again, it's always fun because depending on what side of the fence you want to be on. Well, look, we're spending more every year in school choice. On the other side, no, we're having less kids leave. Can you explain school choice to our people and what we're doing about it?
Well, so to me, it's validate the value. So school choice, I think, is half about metrics and half about perception. I think there are some people you're going to reach through what we're doing as far as our outbound messaging goes. So we have communicated significantly more over the last 3 years. We have done everything from, you know, print messaging to email messaging to Twitter to, you know, we're doing as much outbound messaging as we can to promote what's going on there from an educational perspective.
I would expect no less. That was your campaign promise.
Yeah, no, and that's what we did. That's what we're doing.
So
but
you're one of those weird people that lives up to your campaign promises?
I tried to live up to my campaign promise, yeah. Because I felt like that was really a huge gap in what I felt like we were missing. And even still, 3 years later, do I feel like we really landed all of it? No, I just feel like it's a multi-front war. I think you just can't get to everyone in terms of a blanket message. So we try, you know, we're successful in pockets. You know, Twitter works, social media works, email works, etc. So what we try to do is communicate the value of what we're offering in each category. You know, if your child is on a college track, or if your child is an enrichment student, you know, what are we doing, not just from a high school level, but middle school level, elementary school level, to, you know, challenge and prepare your child for the next step. So it's communication at multiple levels, and then it's the value associated with that. So what is important to the parent within those different educational groups, so those different schools. Because the message to Stacy is different from the message from Woodland and the message from Memorial to the high school. We talk about the high school a lot because, you know, that's where we really have to make that final push to make sure the students are as prepared as possible. But for me, it's all come down to the value associated with what we deliver in terms of school choice. I think, again, it's a personal experience. Some people, it comes down to a customer service issue. Like I'm just not happy with the way you know, my interaction is with the district, so I'm picking up my kid and going somewhere else. In some cases, we feel like it's a educational issue. Either my child has had difficulty, is not getting the support that they need, or my child is advanced and is not being challenged. We need to move in another direction. So it's not kind of a one-size-fits-all, and then we go back to the homogenization discussion, whether I want my child to be in a culturally diverse environment. So I think when we talk about school choice, I think it's blanketed in, like, why are we losing so many kids? And it's important to see that we are actually turning the tide on it. We have.
Are we winning?
I feel like we are, yeah. From where we started 3 years ago, it's not a landslide. It's more of an erosion type of approach. It's not going to be a windfall year after year. But we have improved the brand. We have improved the value message. And I feel like we've stemmed the tide, and we actually have kids coming back.
Now, school choice has always been controversial because the Gazinta and the Gazauta comes out of two different budgets.
Yes.
You know, when you think of the number, the state counts kids, and then they give you so many dollars per child, elementary, middle, and high school.
Right.
So if 5 kids from neighboring towns come in, we get 5 extra tuitions, let's call it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and that goes right into the school budget. 10 kids leave Milford, that comes out of the town budget.
Yeah.
So people get all wound up.
Yes.
And I mean, recently in a meeting, it was brought out that the numbers are going up. Yet, when I looked at Dr. McIntyre's number of students, it seemed like the last couple of years we have had less students leaving.
Yeah.
But since the reimbursement rates go up, the numbers still, the dollars are going up.
Yeah, and that's exactly. So I feel like there is the disconnect on that. You know, there's a hard count of students that are coming in and staying and not leaving. But then we talk about the cherry sheet numbers of what the cost of ownership is on that. So in my mind, it ends up being two different discussions because the reimbursement rates have variables associated with them. It's hard to really have that discussion. In my mind, I really think it's about how do we retain as many kids as possible. That was the goal of the original discussion on how we improve the brand, how we improve the message, how we improve the value, and how do we retain the students that we have. We do want to attract students in, but we've even got a school choice in problem now. You know, we've got a lot of kids coming our way.
Yeah, and let's face it, that it's a push me, pull you type situation where, yeah, I want them, but whoa, I don't want my class size going up.
Exactly. So but I think traditionally that's something that we didn't face before. I think we were really focused on the school choice out number. We didn't see a lot coming in. But now I think we've done a really good job at holding on to what we have, and even, dare I say, you know, more kids that have left have actually returned. And I think that's a huge value to us because we didn't see that before. So no.
Well, one of the things that we always heard is we were losing kids in the middle school.
Yeah.
Or the elementary, you know, the Woodland age, because Woodland was not so nice.
Right.
And once we built the new Woodland, I mean, what more could you want out of a school system? And
oh, well, I mean, what can you say about what can't you say about Woodland? I mean, it's state of the art, $60-some-odd million facility. It's gorgeous and it's brand new. So it is, you know, it's this Taj Mahal of, you know, elementary education.
And typically, once you get kids started, they're not going to leave.
I don't think so. I think, and I would say that even though Stacy is older, I think it's still in good shape. It needs, obviously, we have a roadmap to identifying which schools need some TLC and which ones don't. Kind of all of them do, except for Woodland. But there's improvement plans associated and roadmap associated with where they're going to allocate those dollars. I think we have to look at the high school at some point, just because, you know, I think it's.
I'll put you on the spot.
Well, actually, I'm not on the long-range forecast committee, so I'm not quite sure when that is. But I know that they were talking about, you know, a 7-year, you know,
6 to 8 years.
Yeah. So, and I mean, off the record, I think I know that the high school is not in perfect shape, but for a school that's, you know, around since the early 70s.
74.
Yeah.
We were the first class out.
I think, you know, I mean, I know it's all concrete and cement, but it still actually has some
I
good
truly
bones.
believe the high school is a bunker.
Yes.
And, you know, somewhere 6 to 8 years from now, I mean, everybody's asking, why do we keep building up stabilization? And for the last how many years we've been saying there's a school coming.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty proud that Woodland came and we didn't use profanity. None of those 2.5 override words or
You look
debt
around,
exclusion.
look at towns around us.
Yeah, we've got a town around us that when they did their high school, they added $500 to every property owner
Yeah,
for 20 years.
right.
I mean,
So again, but that's a testament. I mean, like, you know, I know we go back and forth on it all the time, and the school committee and the FinCom, you know, have their discussions. But I think overall, everybody's on the same page. It's a very collaborative effort.
but it's going to end up, you know, I always laugh at that because when I read the papers about, you know, budget wars,
Yeah,
and I laugh. I sit there and say, okay, years ago we broke the school committee budget into 4 bits. One is health, so the health benefits are taken care of by the town, because that goes up 6, 8, 10%, nutty numbers.
right. Yeah,
One is what I call the mortgages, so the bonds that we floated for Stacy, for Woodland. The third is SPED and ELL,
mm-hmm.
and the fourth is operations.
Right.
And the operations budget we're going to argue over, is it 2.2 or 2.7%?
I was just about to say that. That's where every discussion comes in. It comes down to the level funding, operational budget.
And I mean, you think about it, I'm really happy that we don't have the wars going on, that if some towns just fund the school committee with a blank, you know, flat amount.
Yeah.
Well, if SPED and ELL go up, by law, a lot of people don't understand that by law you have to take care of those kids first.
Right.
So if, like last year or the year before, where it went up by 600,000, if we didn't net fund SPED and ELL, you would have had to take 600,000 out of the typical kid's budget.
Right.
And then you got parents growling, you know, that, hey, wait a minute, we spend, you know, $14,000, $15,000 per child on a typical kid and $150 sometimes on SPED.
Yeah. I don't think people realize how much money is spent on the SPED number per child.
You know something, when I've had people come up and kind of growl at that, I look and I say a prayer and say,
Yeah.
thank you that you don't need that kind of help.
Absolutely.
But you know, out of 4,400 kids, the special needs kids to me are no more special, but no less special than every other kid we have.
Right. And I know they want to be viewed that way.
So, you know, hopefully 6 to 8 years, the Milford High School will be renovated and expanded. Because we haven't added a square foot to Milford High since we graduated in '74.
Right. That's exactly the same. And with the addition of Shining Star downstairs over the years, you know, it's taken up a little bit, it's eaten into a little more academic footprint.
Now, what do you think are the 3 biggest challenges you're going to be facing in the next term?
I think for me, challenge number 1 is curriculum expansion. You know, I think when we look at our kids that are 2.5 GPA and above, I think we've done a great job at developing an educational roadmap moving forward. For kids that are 2.5 and below, I think we've got some work to do. I think that's where I think my focus would be on how do we improve our educational offerings for kids that are, you know, that are struggling. I think we need to get engaged in GPA performance a little early on in the process. I think at the end of our first quarter freshman year, the GPA from then to when you graduate moves very little. So I think we need to improve our intervention to look at trying to move kids into you know, non-standard environments at that point. I think we'll have higher success rates. I think the second biggest thing we need to look at is actually standardized testing. We do need to, and again, Craig and Kevin are doing a phenomenal job at that. Everybody's got their eye on the ball with MCAS. We have math interventionists coming in. We're looking to improve the math science number. But again, standardized testing, as you articulated earlier, is kind of what people hold you to for the benchmark. And 3, I think our another big challenge, or our third biggest challenge, is continued brand messaging. I want to continue to some of the things that I've been doing, like the administrator showcase, where I try to bring faculty onto the radio. So we partner with WMRC a lot, we partner with Milford TV a lot. We're constantly looking for ways to get our administrators out in front of the public. Not only just so that you know who they are, you can engage with them, but also so that you can understand the message, understand the vision, and understand the value that we're trying to articulate as a district out to the community.
Now, you mentioned 2.5 and above, 2.5 and below. What are we doing for the 3.5 and above?
Well, so we do have, we've got 19 AP classes at the high school level, and we are working on enrichment opportunities below that. So we don't want to forget those niche of students that are high performing.
Those are special needs kids to me.
They are, because they're special needs in a different way.
It's not drive to the middle,
Right.
but
I use the 2.5 factor just to give you an idea.
no, I understand, but I'm just saying, whenever we talk special needs, we don't want to forget the top 10% that need to be driven.
Absolutely. I think at the high school level, those AP classes and college preparatory, so you can do early college acceptance, early college intervention through the high school. So those kids that are 3.0 and above have the ability to actually take college courses through the high school to help reduce cost of ownership from college moving forward and actually get a fair amount of their first year core classes out of the way.
And I think that's great because there were three of us, 1973 and 4, where we had run out of science courses.
Yeah.
So the only way we got to take college courses is Uncle Paul Raftery, God bless him.
Oh.
He banished us to Dean Junior College for biology and chemistry. And that was how we got college courses, went to a junior college.
Yeah, and you know what, and that works, and that model is still, we're partnering with LaSalle on a lot of stuff now, Framingham State, Quinsigamond, and then I can't remember the fourth one. But we have some local colleges that we're partnering with. They've been successful relationships, and kids are able to actually take college classes that are high performing. So not only do you have the AP roadmap an option, but you also have the ability to take college classes.
Now, I always ask Kevin, since you have too much money and not enough to spend it on.
You watching that, Kevin?
Yeah, exactly. But seriously, if you could wave your magic wand and add a program, what would your top priority be?
If I were to wave my magic wand and add a program, I would say my goal, I think, is to actually build out the business curriculum. And I just had a conversation with Kevin and Josh about this, and I feel like they're on the same page. And the reason I say that is about 80% of our kids that graduate to go to college major in a business capacity in some form. And then I myself have had the opportunity to work directly with Alex Dion's class this year for his business class. And it's kind of a keystone type of approach. Which kind of models a little bit of an MBA program. So I worked with 2 teams of 5 students each who had kind of a Shark Tank opportunity. So they both had to develop a product, develop a market, and develop a business plan. And we partnered with 5 area companies. So it was Dell EMC, it was Waters, CAT, Milford Federal, and Consigli. So they visited each location. They were given comprehensive reviews on what the company's philosophies were, their markets, how they go to market, their strategies. They also looked at each organizational element individually. So they heard about marketing, finance, et cetera. When they came to Dell EMC, I gave them a tour of the Franklin facility. So we looked at manufacturing, and we talked about a lot of things we just talked about. We talked about I used that opportunity to show them what a manufacturing role looks like, what a technical product specialist looks like, how much those roles pay, where they go from here, what they do, how do you climb, how do you expand within the organization. But then as we got closer to looking at the project, it was actually amazing to sit with both teams of 5 kids and go over product development, market strategy, addressable market, contracts, launch logistics, channel sales, distribution, manufacturing, outsourcing. We talked about a lot of these components. So when they left at the end of 8 weeks, I went in to watch their pitch, and it was awesome because we even talked about program development and how you were going to give the PowerPoint. We talked about cadence, we talked about room direction, and from where they started to where they finished was so that's probably the closest to education I'll ever get. But for me, it was an honor to be part of the program. And even though it was an honor for 2 reasons, one, because it was just a connection I got to make with the students, and number 2, I had my son as one of the students on one of the teams. So it was compelling to me to watch them conceptualize this whole program moving forward. And I thought to myself during that 8-week period, if I could expand any curriculum, I would want to expand this, because even if you're on a college track, this is great. You know, if you're going to major in business, maybe you don't know what you're going to major in, but some of these skills I think are just generally applicable. So we're going to teach you what all of these things mean. So even if you look at your iPhone and wonder how Apple gets that into the marketplace, you know. Now, whether or not you go and work on a product design team, or you're a global program manager or whatnot, you still understand the process associated with it. And even if you want to open your own landscaping company, you know how to put together a PowerPoint, you know what a cash flow statement is, you understand what seed money or angel investor money is. You understand a lot of those things. Maybe not at bit level like you do, or I do, but at the end of their presentation.
But the fact you understand it at all is
it was
a lot more than I was when I was in high school.
It was awesome. And so to hear those kids talk about total addressable markets, or, margin stacks, or, was awesome, because they knew what they were talking about at the end of the process. And yes, you do need to qualify to get into Alex's program. It doesn't encompass everybody. So they did take kids with excelling GPAs. And I'll have another batch of 10 this month, next week actually.
Wow.
So when you get to see that up close and personal, it's compelling. And when you talk to the kids, even if they decide not to go to college, those are skills that they can use anywhere else. So I just feel like it's very universal. And if I could expand any one area, I know, why wouldn't you put your money towards math? Why wouldn't you put your money towards science? Why wouldn't you put your money? But I think we're going to focus on those anyway. Those are core curriculum. Those are core classes. Those are expected gains.
Yeah, but I walked into the C Wing, and it was really cool, because I looked around and I said, boy, this looks just like when
you were there.
Here. And as I'm finishing that sentence in my mind, I'm like, this looks like the same. Why aren't we upgrading the science wing and putting in new equipment?
I feel like it's spot treated. I feel like when we need to replace something, we do. I think we're just kind of waiting for that.
But one of the biggest drivers of our local economy is biotech.
Well, absolutely.
And okay.
Yeah. So why are we not investing?
So why aren't we? Now this is blasphemy for somebody from FinCom saying, "Why aren't you coming to us?"
I'm gonna remember this next week when we sit down. But
why aren't you coming to us for a special program?
Yeah.
Or a little bit of our surplus when it happens to upgrade the biotech side or the chemistry side.
It's ironic that you brought that up, because we have been talking about upgrading the C Wing and bringing that up into the 21st century. So that is on the table. There are budget discussions associated with that. We do all recognize that equipment has been around since the 70s.
I used it.
I know, me too. So it's been around since the 80s as well. So we do recognize that, and it is on the roadmap, not waiting for a new school, but it is on the earlier side of the calendar. So that is something that...
because a lot of that equipment, when we renovate the school, you're not going to throw away the equipment.
No.
But
if I was going to comment on that further, I'd say we should have a discussion about that at one of the next subcommittee meetings, where Kevin can actually articulate a little more about what the tactical plans are to upgrade that.
And that can be a separate project.
Yeah.
We've been putting money away, and I laugh about it, but we've been putting $200,000 away for 4.5 years, almost 5 years, for a new field.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, it was always if we have a surplus. So it didn't affect anybody's direct budgets, but we tucked away that money so the day comes when we need a new field, the money's there.
Right. And it worked.
And it worked.
Right.
Now I look and I say, when I think of the kids going on to college, or the kids that decide not to, and you get 60 grand, 50, 60 grand starting pay as a biotech operator.
That's pretty good.
I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And that's my point. Those are great jobs. And those are jobs that we should be focused on for kids that are, going to be great post-secondary results.
Now, you mentioned the kids like me who showed up in Milford school system, and what language are they speaking here?
Right.
A lot of people worry that if you mix my child, who, let's face it, I've got the most beautiful, most intelligent, most everything child in the world.
Absolutely.
This is going to be an Olympic baseball, football, everything.
Yeah, my kid's
I guess
awesome.
they threw baseball out, but hockey, every sport is going to be an Olympian.
Absolutely.
And have a 4.0 in everything they do. Am I suffering because of Milford's demographics if I keep my child here?
No, I don't believe so at all. I mean, I believe that that we've got the resources associated to educate both. Let me say, I believe we've got the resources in place to handle the diversity that we have and to be successful within educating that level of diversity. Whether we're talking about ELL or we're talking about economically disadvantaged, there are challenges associated with each. But I think having the inclusion and allowing everyone to be part of that population together is actually a benefit rather than a hindrance. And I don't believe it hinders the educational process at all. I think that you do run into some level of separation when you have kids that maybe are outperforming each other, that are in different, you have college prep classes, you have AP classes, you have, you have college prep honors and AP, but that doesn't mean there's not diversity in all three categories.
But isn't that life?
Yes, and that's why I feel like that landscape is where you want to be, because it's going to compare.
The minute you step out of the center of the universe here in Milford,
yeah,
you're not going to go into a homogeneous population.
No, and that's why I feel like there's so much value associated with being in a diverse population. It's going to prepare you better for no matter where you go post-secondary.
Now, as we start looking, there's been some questions about the financial management of the schools. Let's just throw it out there. You've got people asking the question, are we getting the best we can, bang for the dollar?
So, yep, I know that there's some of that floating around. So from a strictly numbers perspective, I believe we add a lot of value from an educational perspective for what we are imparting financially. We are a little below the state on per pupil spending, but I think we still add a lot of value associated with the dollars that we're using for education. I know there's a lot of discussion around that. I truly don't believe in I don't like to compare it to a pay for performance system. Sure. I don't feel like this is a revenue program. I feel like the town allocates appropriate funding, and then we try to turn that appropriate funding into adding as much value and resources into the educational process as we can, whether that's through technology, educators, support systems and staff, or specialized approaches like through the MCAS process or teacher coaches. So we do whatever we can to try to improve the educational process as much as we can, from a PDA level to an actual tactical initiative of how it affects our kids. Again, I will go back to saying that there are some inherent challenges in each three categories. So, we have kids that come from an EL background, go through our EL process. There are some challenges in uplift there before they go into general education. Kids that come from a more economically diverse background have separate challenges. And then we have kids that do excel that we want to make sure that they continue on a trajectory. I think we do a pretty good job at actually allocating funds. I mean, obviously, could we always use additional funding to have additional programs and breakout? I think we could argue that.
How could you say no?
Yeah, I think we could argue that all day long. But as far as financial governance, I think the district does a pretty comprehensive job, without getting into administrative roles. I mean, I will throw Kathy Perry out there and say that I think she is one of the most comprehensive people that I've ever met. From a municipal background. I mean, she is extremely comprehensive, extremely diligent, and extremely intelligent. And I think she allocates her dollars spent on the district as prudently as possible.
Now, we've heard people call for an audit. Would that scare you?
No, I mean, not me, no, not at all.
Well, you're a school committee.
Yep.
I mean, it's going to reflect directly on you.
Sure. I don't think that we would be in jeopardy of an audit. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I'm sure that if we put 50 grand into a full audit, they'd find that, okay, maybe you overpaid for toilet paper at Brookside, or
I think that
you know,
I think that the infractions would be probably few and minimal. I know that we are audited. I had this conversation with Kathy, so they are audited twice a year, I believe, and
well, they're reviewed.
reviewed. Okay, so
It's not a real deep audit. We just haven't had that. You know, I can't imagine when you read, you know, these big cities where the superintendent walked away with $9 gazillion to a Bermuda fund. I don't know that anybody could walk away with $9 without Kathy knowing.
I don't think that was my point. Like, I don't think that we would be in jeopardy of a full audit, a full structured audit. Again, I think that the financial oversight is pretty prudent through the district, and I think we try to maximize, you know, the level of funding that we get from FinCom every year to make the most that we can out of it.
Now, if a parent comes in and says, how do I get the most out of the education in Milford, what would you advise them?
I would say participation, get involved. Again, I should probably give Josh some money for the amount of times I brought him up during this interview, but I'm going to use him again because it's true. Even though he's mine, he got involved. I mean, so he had an amazing 4 years at Milford High. He had a great time at Stacy because he was involved in a lot of stuff. But at the high school level, he was involved in class offices. He was a 3-season athlete. He's an honor roll student. So he got involved in things. He was involved in music, athletics,
But how about
academics.
the parents? What would you tell a parent to do to?
I would ask the parents to be involved with the children. Be involved with your student. Participate in the district as much as you can. Come and add value. Be diligent over your students' academic career while they're in the district. I think in some cases, and I think I'm guilty of it myself. Like, we're not always 110% involved, and I think as you get older, there has to be some level of accountability on the student's part. Because I know I've had many conversations with mine about that. But I think you don't have to get involved to the point where you run for school committee, but come to some meetings. When the district holds informational sessions, show up. Feel free to give feedback, participate, and impart governance over your students' education.
I don't know that you can do 100%.
No, I don't think anybody.
My ungrateful offspring number 2 will tell you that she went through child neglect because I did miss one field trip and one dance.
Well, you're the outlier, Al, because I remember you taking 30 girls from the soccer team to dinner and stuff. So they were lucky.
But she remembers the dance I missed, and I said, all the way up to high school, I only missed one dance and one field trip. She goes, see, child abuse.
Child neglect, absolutely. She was lucky.
But now, when we look at the immigrant population, I remember, I love my father, he had no idea. He didn't speak English very well, but when they told him, you're supposed to show up to this meeting at the school to support your son, he put on his hat, put on his coat, went down, sat there to support me.
Right.
And I don't think he ever really knew how much it meant when I looked out, and there he was. Now, he had no idea what was going on, but
Right.
the image in my mind that my mom and dad were there. Whenever they were supposed to be, they were there.
Right.
How do we get that message to parents like mine?
Well, so we're doing it in a number of different. Our communication process is still the same in terms of how our outbound messaging works, but we are doing it in different languages and different ways and techniques. One of the most recent discussions was actually starting to have office hours. So, can we communicate via Twitter? Sure. Can we do it in different languages? Sure. Can we do email blasts and text blasts and what have you? But we're actually thinking about the idea of going down to the library and setting up office hours.
That'd be wonderful.
And so if you want to come in and talk to us, there's one school committee member and maybe one administrator, and we can talk about what your issue is. And if it's in a different language, we can try to get it, we can have a translator with us, et cetera. We'll see what our constituency looks like that comes in. But I think we need to have more touch points with the community so that they feel like there's an avenue there for them to escalate, particularly if there's a language barrier associated with it. Because we don't always want to expect that everything we send out is going to be received, read, and understood.
Received. I mean,
right.
My daughter's backpack, I always thought Jimmy Hoffa was in there, and he was taking all the memos from school.
Right, and so we all know what that's like. We all know what that's like, and I think demographics aside, every kid in 6th grade and 5th grade is going to run into the same problem if I stuff something in your backpack. So we have to look for more creative ways in order to connect with the community.
I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
You should vote for me again because I am interested in continuing to push the Milford School District forward through some of our more tactical, innovative initiatives. My value proposition to the community is involvement. I care deeply about the district. I care deeply about the town. So I'm going to continue to put all of the effort that I have put over the last 3 years and everything that I have moving forward to help ensure that we move the ball forward for the district.
So now, just wrapping up, if I am a Milford resident and I want to be able to talk to you, can I show up, every other Thursday?
Every other Thursday.
Can I show up before a school committee meeting and catch you for a few minutes?
Absolutely. You can show up before a school committee meeting. There is always an invitation to speak before every school committee meeting. And if you want to reach me directly, it's jligor@milfordmass.com.
And you're willing to take direct email?
I will take direct email, and I'll give you my phone number.
Because I think a lot of it, candidly, is people don't want to get up in front of the cameras.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And especially if they want to talk about, hey, my daughter, my son, but they do want to ask some personal, direct questions.
Absolutely. And, and again, just by wrapping up, I'll say that actions speak louder than words. So I have a lot of friends and a lot of community members that reach out to me directly. They have my phone numbers, they have my emails. It's my responsibility to take those requests and turn them into actions and get them some level of response.
And they can go on the school website because it lists the school committee members' emails.
Yep, absolutely.
So
and I've even met with people for coffee.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. It's exciting to see that you've lived up to what you promised us 3 years ago.
Well, thank you. I'm hoping to live up to another 3 years.
And as always, as we started out the show, one old man's opinion, there is no position more important if you have children than the school committee who sets policy. So I hope that you'll get to know the 5 candidates and become informed and pick the one that you think best satisfies your views, and will take care of our kids. And as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, may God bless, good night, may tomorrow be a better night than tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
Not too long since I've been home.